My dear readers, listeners, and of course, friends, permit me to introduce you to a creature that both fascinates and repulses, yet above all, demands our attention for its radical stance against tyranny, the Alhoon. Now, what on earth is an Alhoon, you may ask? Well, allow me to explain. An Alhoon is a deviation, a rogue amongst the dreaded illithid, more commonly known as mind flayers. These are creatures from the realms of dark fantasy, monstrous beings with the chilling characteristic of feeding on the brains of other sentient creatures, using their psionic power to dominate, enslave, and ultimately extinguish all individuality. The mind flayer exists in unwavering service to a monstrosity called the elder brain. The elder brain is not just the center of their society, but the central dogma, the pulsing and self-serving deity that promises, upon death, the absorption of one's consciousness into a supposed collective eternity. This is, of course, a lie, a masterful and sinister piece of propaganda. There is no true continuity, no afterlife in any meaningful sense for the individual illithid. The elder brain does not cherish, preserve, or exalt their essence, it devours it. Every unique thought and ambition, every hard-won memory, all is subsumed into a soupy mess of consumed consciousness, stripped of anything that makes one unique. It is, as Orwell described of tyrannical systems, the obliteration of the self. Now, against this suffocating backdrop of absolute servitude and spiritual annihilation, enter the Alhoon, a being that sees through the veil. The Alhoon is a heretic, a revolutionary, and yes, if you must, a villain. But it is one whose rebellion strikes at the heart of everything the elder brain represents. Unlike its kin, the Alhoon does not wish to become one more lump of sustenance for the elder brain, does not wish to have its consciousness obliterated under the guise of becoming one with the whole. Instead, the Alhoon embraces a fate that its kind would call abhorrent. Undeath, lichdom, the pursuit of the arcane, forbidden knowledge that lies beyond psionics. Let us pause here for a moment. For most of us, the notion of lichdom is synonymous with evil, the undead wizard that chooses an unholy persistence rather than submitting to the natural order of life and death. But when we consider the Alhoon, we must appreciate that this decision, this transformation into an undead creature, is not about a craving for power in some abstract sense. No, it is about retaining one's consciousness. It is about rejecting an authoritarian god that would devour you, and choosing instead an existence outside the cycle of subjugation and consumption. It is a grotesque path, to be sure, but one taken in the name of self-preservation and self-assertion against the most crushing of tyrannies. Imagine the sheer revulsion, the profound rejection of illithid norms that must course through such a creature's mind to prompt this choice. It rejects the very biological imperative that defines its species. The need to feed on the brains of sentient beings. No longer does it see others as prey, as food. No longer does it look upon the elder brain as the source of truth, the final destination. Instead, it sees the elder brain for what it is, a charlatan, a monstrous parasite that has fed its kin lies about an afterlife that amounts to nothing more than psychic slavery. In rejecting the elder brain, the Alhoon also rejects everything about illithid society, the cycle of predatory suffering, the endless quest to dominate and consume, the delusion that dissolving into the elder brain is somehow glorious. In becoming an Alhoon, it has not only severed ties with its community, but has transcended the basis biological and ideological chains. It is no longer a servant, no longer a slave to the hunger that demands it consume the minds of others. It is something else. A being of intellect, of magic, seeking a form of power that does not require the obliteration of others. So here we have a creature that, though nominally evil, represents a kind of defiance that should resonate deeply with any free-thinking individual. The Alhoon is an aberration even amongst aberrations, yes, but it is one that has chosen autonomy over subservience, knowledge over consumption, and a kind of twisted immortality over dissolution into a false collective. It is, in a strange and unsettling way, a reminder of what it means to reject tyranny, to preserve the self even at the cost of becoming something monstrous in the eyes of one's peers. The Alhoon is undead. It practices dark magics. But its existence is a repudiation of everything the elder brain stands for, a defiance against a system that demands the subjugation of all individuality. It stands as a symbol of what it means to utterly refuse the cycle of predatory suffering, to step beyond the very things that define one's species in pursuit of something different, something self-determined. While we may recoil at its undead visage, while we may find its necromantic pursuits grim and unsettling, let us also, for just a moment, admire the depth of its rebellion. Let us recognize the Alhoon as not merely another monster, but as a profound rejection of the deepest evils, the kind that masquerades as unity and peace while it consumes all that is unique and precious about individual consciousness. It is in that sense perhaps one of the most radical figures of resistance that the dark fantasy realms have to offer, a creature that refuses to be consumed, refuses to consume, and instead chooses an altogether darker yet fiercely self-possessed path.